Catharsis, a trilogy, Hiroshima, person, Ichor, for the age of cataclysm and pandemic, and for a world that has lost its moral compass, by GAVIN BANTOCK.
Hiroshima, Part 1. One morning, it was Golgotha somehow outside my window, and it was night there, and there were crowds of people in top hats laughing and poking sticks into ashes as if to level the ground. And when I went down, there was round blood on the grass blades instead of dew, but only in certain places. And when I looked up, I thought it was a goat nailed to the cross, its head like a balanced rock, ready to topple, swaying a little, too big for the body, somehow, and looking down a long way at me. There had been a fire in the night, because the walls of the garden were rust red and black and white in places. And the town over the wall also had felt fire in its rafters and cellars. A pregnant woman said she could not remember when it was, but told me Zion also lay in a coma. But the walls were rust red and black, and a thin choir of white-faced children sang a most cheerful hymn, and suddenly whistled it, and stuck on one note, and held it. There was wind whining across the desert. And they sat on the green grass where the church was before the fire, or played hopscotch in the aisle, or played guns with the blown-up pipes of the organ. I remember it was cold. Today, I believe every city has Zion in the holy part of the city, and the Golgotha stands somewhere, knitted in with the streets, or under the foundations of a new bakery. And likewise, mostly unknown in most of the cities, there's a place of sanctity trodden on, places where uncrowned Christs suffered and died, unknown. A place also where kisses hurt, coins rendered to Caesar and to the fountains, gardens and parks where middle-aged men spend their despair in raincoats, a place where scaffolding collapsed and delinquents stole a censer from a burning church, and corners almost built for a kind of waiting, a story written in the initials etched in places of interest and occasion in the hidden brick. We know little of these undeniable histories, but remember outlines of our own, though few of us surely had much real occasion to laugh, save those of us the hammered nail missed. But laughing is only another way of weeping, when you think of it. We close the door against the gale we know will smash the door if it cares to. In my garden a tree grew crooked. A rose went black in the veins of some of the leaves, and we children laughed for a time, but later forgot to mow the grass. With this briar rose in my hand, I am here in this city, suddenly alive to the slums of my leader's city. There was nowhere to lie down to listen to a loving voice in the darkness. No place to cry in save a place where fountains played. I suppose it is hard for one has no understanding where God is, to understand that God no longer holds the thunderbolt as Zeus did. The bolt has God in its fist and shutters him on the pagan Ares, along with all his unthroned predecessors. Ice-bound there, Atlas has friends in the sky shouldering massifs of the dead gods. I heard nothing but the cold waves and distant cries of burning cities. There, for my entertainment all the while, I had the wild swan song and unnatural flashes in the sky. For men's laughter I had the gannet's cry, and the unhappy faces of impersonal streets, and the curlew. For my drink I had the singing of a girl. Yes, I had that, and had the acrid fumes of the blitz. I was born in the midst of it. And something incites me into the haunts of dolphins, irresistibly deep into the sea world. But I need Orphic sea sway to lay the waves low, so that the seahorse mains blow no more wild on the running ridges and the stones, and so cities sway no more. I have been too sea-struck a gleeman, too spray-dumbed and foundering, too bound to the dashing barrel of the ocean to rise up, call, and lead the way alone. And cities broke my heart. I saw the scaffold on St. Paul's, a city's heart in need of help, and paid builders with coarse brushes and water scrubbing the stone clean of the city's smoke, risen from men's grey minds and rising. The city learnt to love the old things in the city, craving to preserve each former masterpiece. How gingerly they lifted out the unexploded shell from the heart of the Blitz. And in the white wards, the wrecks of toiling bodies moan, as the bones ache to the core always, and the surgeons slave to save the blood beating out with the muscles of the kicking red heart, and silver clamps in the glaring theatres. One man's sick heart struggles and slithers there, and fingers seeming to grope under the water slip from the task, often through 7 hours of skill and perspiration. 7 men perhaps in green smocks and red-stained rubber gloves, all moving nearer to death, and the saved heart beats somewhat safer afterwards in the ward. Today he dies a natural death, sitting in the garden. Or an old man dying under the crab, reconciled to the cause and the that way end. Loathly to him to open his eyes again in the white ward he took farewell of, when they told him sleep was nigh. He saw salvation in narcotic balm, given daily at the fixed hour, recurring, knowing also deep down that killers of pain addict and kill quicker also other organs, one by one. Heaven is a white room with men lying there all along in iron beds, and hell is a white room with men lying awake at night when the night nurse doesn't come. Heaven and hell are always other kinds of living, it seems. If I believe in departure to whatever, to what heaven, to hell, I'll never die from this pain. If only I could not be walking in this street, not hearing the horns and brakes always, not frowning at the lights which seek to lay bare the brain's qualities and announce them nightly on the sides of tall buildings, the lights which hurt my eyes. And yet, to fly as a crow flies, how much more beautiful are those shining towers which challenge the grey dome of St. Paul's in the city's stone heart than the grey dome of St. Paul's. And yet, how fallible as Wren's dream. On the base of one of Memnon's monuments, thrown there in the Valley of Kings, tourists from Athens in days of old carved their names for love of what was older. No, somehow to share their millennium. And we all cling to a collapsing past and lay our stone on the lurching cairn and cherish ruins. Oh, bright cup, we have always cried, and have built up flying buttresses against our myths to make us less ashamed of our inhuman origin. Gone, golden age, we cry. O chain-mailed warrior, glory of kings and gods, how the times have passed, how they grow dark under night's shadows as though they had never been there. And we marvel at the transitory world. Nothing stays here, neither ourselves nor the things we try so hard to hold. We lift the faces of our buildings, mend the weathers as it burns in the stone, forgetting the industry of the Grand Canyon, and not knowing that twice already in the earth's story rains have laid all the mountains low, and Cambria's twice been under the sea. Staring hard into our friends' eyes, we sink our struggling bodies to the neck in relics and blind love of the old. Therefore, cities, break my heart and my own city in the year's fall, and ruins heave my heart no more when I think of ruins. For nothing new moves in the land, No room for us to scan the world and conjure dreams ahead as the air burns up. Even the stars we gaze at are their shining histories light-year eons ago. Past binds us, past strangles us with the little things we love, because they lend us permanence against our dying. Find me a way to sleep and wake up free of this interminable museum. Someone to scrape up cities from the earth as gardeners shovel manure up from the country lanes that roses prosper. Someone to scan the rose and coin a song. Truly, I have searched in many yards and gardens, but I found no man until I looked up into the white clouds. Part 2. And Einstein, when the clouds had moved away, was there. And Einstein, the lines curving parabola up from the outside edge of his absolute human eyes, removes, with a winsome smile, his glasses. From the outside time-white edge of the nimbus mane of his great head, and lays down lovingly on the oracle pages before him, next to the striped deck chair, his glasses lovingly down on the deck. And from the wheel room of his miraculous steady ship, binnacle utterly inert in respect to his always scrutiny of the field and the huge energy held there under the cranium, Einstein, weeping over the wonder and the horror of the chain-brilliant reaction flashing through the white-green Uranian chasms, cried over the water, "No, not this for war, not war, or only to bring war altogether to an end. For far better is the deep down still world of the deep Pacific, dearly down there, cool from the sun's indiscriminate will, yet warm from the inner furnace of the shrieking earth. Down there, if only the down there were here where we are, for us to live in, not as the dolphins live, restless where the two worlds meet, but for us to live as gentle, thinking people with minds alive in our wonder. I have looked on the bright, bright side and know the dark. Therefore, not this now for war. Christ's kingdom in this wicked miracle come shall split from end to end in a cacophony of cracked atoms. The city crumbled instantaneously. Whole armies of men who came to rebuild it fell dead to the earth. Geiger forbade them. But something will aboriginals learn after, even if such deadly living dust radiates the world in the trade winds. There shall be books enough left to learn from, and brains of men. Or we may learn anew another way, knowing merely that fishing boats float out there always where there is water for fishes, Pacific. Minds may begin with a notion of floating, and movement be understood from immobility. Einstein's mind. His miracle lies in the still dark of tangible objects, in the luminosity of clocks in the dark, in the unutterable contingent of the truth that were I to exact all the fire held in the cells of my right hand, I could lay mountains low, and I could split wide the wide earth open with my little fingernail. I could play catch with stars, and I could rise up, call, and lead the way alone. One stone, one pebble on the quiet shore holds city wreck. Therefore I peruse a long while on the seashore. One stone. But my right hand lies dormant and low, sometimes a fist, and other sometimes an open palm. And my mind, having marvelled at great things to do and to think of, turns to another way of seeing, purely a winsome thought, a layman's whim, but as much as the oracle was. When the mind, having marvelled at the things undeniably done and thought of by his oracle, considers the horizons, and the horizons, and the horizons, scanned and touched by Einstein's hand. He, reaching out in the dark, once touched Christ's hand, and Christ came alive and held his hand through all the galactic memory and experience of a minute. And I say Christ because I found in Einstein's incantation salvation for the world. He knew the dark and shot light there where the dark was. He opened the window cannily wide for the bat-blind birds to come in, but could not call them or gently hold them in his human hands gently to explain. And they flew in the dark without the spittle. They flew in the light, and therefore without the charm could not wonder at it. In the endless dogfight of the heavens, which were thick with them, they were flying together sometimes in exact collision, as happens sometimes in the atom-smashing cloud chambers, and screaming down, some dying, dead and dark-drowsy somehow, and utterly dumb. Though turns called wise and beautiful songs sometimes, and some listened, and many flew in bold formations in the blue, waterless ocean plains up there, and in the dark green sea floats fishermen used. And storms came, and scrapyards spread bronze and extraneous at the city's edge, when there was no way out of the city, and the green parks were dry, and people just moved in the streets in the rain. Cries there held out there on the grey news. War, mostly war and little conflicts and threats of it. Never the good news, or hardly ever that. Ants pulled off their brothers' wings, did they? and it's all so tired here in the city, no way out of it, of the dust, the noise. And Einstein stood at the window. So much man, him, with open eyes and arms open, and so much Christ, see, always in the wish to reach out, times so much Christ, see, in the sensitivity of his hands. And he showed me so much E equals mc squared. And I couldn't understand, and could a little. And he said, no war. No, not this window for more falling and maiming. Fresh faces and bright eyes, he said. The bright side stays bright here always, where nothing moves. They know no other love than maiming the lights of eyes, and the minds behind them, and the skies behind the eyes. Hiroshima should be the shock and the admonition, and Hiroshima, after the shock, city built up and given utterly to peace, should be the pointing hand, uttering no more Hiroshimas as this was. Einstein died, but the mind breathes still on the breathless world. A change has taken place in his eyes. A dream broke out on the still calm as he sailed there in the peaceful end. This miracle, held in the atoms of one stone, yearns for a just fame. This miracle exists for the apocalypse, is for the wonderful song of war, to bring war all together to an end, and much other also together to an end. You, singing early in the morning, shook dust from the high window. Don't cry then, my leader, that the birds hear you. Maiming and hewing down is the dear, necessary beauty of the world. Often the solitary miner knows not what treasure he has found. Part 3. This is the dream I dreamt at midnight when there was silence in the cities. I saw a magnificent cross borne aloft and tied up with light, an intensely bright beam of wood decorated all over with gold. And I, guilty of crimes and wounded with them, saw this emblem adorned with streaming lights, shining most beautifully, and decorated with gold. I was afraid of this weird cross which seemed to fluctuate with streams of light and colours of all kinds. Now it was misted over with moisture, drenched with flowing sweat and blood. Now it gleamed with precious things, constantly changing. But through that gold, in spite of its splendour, I could perceive the former agony of Christ, so that on its right side the cross seemed to sweat with blood. And through that cross I saw also the present despair of Christ, hesitant and half redelivered to the earth, the right side of his face running with perspiration. And through that I saw the actual decay of his body underground, as any man's transmutation in the soil's dark, pressing down on the ribs. And then I saw the history of the cross scored deep in a black sky since Christ. And the earth grew up like a child and aged like an old man, and children were born, and there were mouths to feed, and hunger was a word written in every book. I saw them invent in the crucible bread and meat for the meat hall, grains of rice and bolts and vitamin pills poured from the same machines. And there were more mouths to feed, new young and the held old, and still the gutters ran with blood and perspiration, and green bottles lay broken in the hedgerows. At the same time, I could see hundreds of smiling and careless mothers littering the world, and laws to govern birth decreed in all countries and wilfully broken down, and children littering the world. The death of her brothers was not so much anguish to Badahilda as her own predicament, that clearly she was with child. She was too shocked even to think clearly what might happen if everybody that has passed so may this. I saw 50 years double this in Festa, as the mothers still smiled and still cared less, and the earth, shrinking daily from within, ransacked for corn, and famines and troubles and crowd-packed rooms. A chemist looked up from his glass city, smiling benignly, saying, "In this flask I hold the rosiness of apples. I have made it in the dark. The sun's only good for sunburn on the seashore." Today I saw a man in a white coat crushed beneath a tram. My dream shuddered and shook horribly in my head. When I was inside the mountain moved, and my sleep was shattered. I woke up speechless, hearing a man screaming in the distance, and found even awake I moved, still in a photographic dream. There were many of us at that time, lumbering up a white hill, made it seemed of moon splinters, and a cross stood on the hill's top, but some of us were too weary to go on. I opened my knapsack of books and settled down to read, in spite of the noise of breathing everywhere. And my book was the story of the Black Death. 42 million dead in 15 years, 2/3 of Europe. No matter whose foot stamped on that patch of earth, or whose hand extinguished so many fires at random, it was wonderfully done. It came from the east, but no matter, all things come from the east, which emulate the sun. So rose in brilliant emulation, fresh longing for life and eager cities built the Renaissance. In the dense, dead continent, a sudden concentration on lost cults, old mines reworked, and new gold, new diamonds picked out, cut, polished, and lain bright, in huge temples and museums designed to recognize the salvation of the race risen out of the pain and the horror of the Black Death. Yet, not a universal purge. Nor was the flood a universal purge. Nor was the whip in Zion a universal purge. Nor was the Black Death. I know there will never be a universal purge until the galaxies collapse upon themselves in the billion blinding future. Never a star-wide purge in our time, only impermanent cleansing of the world's bullion, a land here, another land, and then, if only some pristine flamethrower would throw flame over the little brown towns down there, and set up after everywhere an aluminium city, and yet somehow leave the green fields, the mountains, and the lambs. If only the sea were green all down to the sea's bed, and no dreadnoughts, tins, and wrecks clutter the marine forests, however much the sharks need dark dens to hide in. Then, down there our city could begin, and down there our grass be green, and our bodies immunized against the grey pollution of the air, and the rusty edges which make the blood flow. No more graters. Melt the North Pole and the South, someone, is the cry. Flood the lands, and let the only ark be that of men Pacific. Out of this maelstrom, how to choose sound occupants is the entire agony before we ourselves crack the shins of Atlas. Hiroshima, warned of the latest affliction to scorch the ill plains and the green sea. And Christ shall lead a wonderful destruction, as he led the deluge, walking in the green rain and walking on the waters left there thereafter, and walking under the dove, and in the temple, and in the Black Death, and in the sun which shone there thereafter, and in the Red Cross crusades, and in Einstein's mind, undermining war's cause and the reason for it, and in Hiroshima, and now, coming soon hereafter, here after Hiroshima came, and Christ shall lead this wonderful destruction, for it shall come, this utter blitz of the leading cities, for minds have delegated power to engines fallible as minds, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and great glory in the cloud above each city, and the earth shall be cleansed somewhere, and the scourge scour the land deepest yet, spreading invisible, insidious murder in the man's blood, visibly struck down, vomiting, hair falling out, and blotches on the skin, and slow decline rising from the fallout in the wind, and great glory. 60,000 dead in Hiroshima in the flash of it. 60,000 more dying in the homeless weeks when Geiger forbade return. And altogether 2 million less to breadwin. Human hand in Nagasaki, bedded in the melted glass of green bottles, our new amber. I have stood in Hiroshima's pristine tomb, seen specimens of human skin torn by a boy in body blitz from his red, raw limbs, and feces on the clinic steps, no different from the living and the dead. And they put flour on their wounds, and the flour dried, and the flesh, and no way to whip off the fast pain. I am utterly out of dream. This was Japan in 1945, when I was 6. And Hiroshima is my God. And I love my God, and ask my God, come and burn up the cities, Lord. Come now, while the city's air burns up and communities sigh. Come, there's no way out of the city. Burn up the dried up streets. I fear not, my city, I fear not. Surely the way to prepare the way is surely to fear not. Christ comes. Accept the Holocaust of millions. Christ is this entire war, come to cleanse and salve and create air after and song in the air that is clean and saved and creative as the sea wind. For the rain will wash the stones, and fishermen shall float out there always where the sea for fishes, and men Pacific living on the green shores, and bread enough for the hungry, and no hunger, until again the land no more can breathe in the city air, till cities creep down into the quiet bays and to the sheltered coves. I would choose to take my end as children take their end, as Toshio Nakamura, boy of 10. The day before the bomb, I went for a swim. In the morning, I was eating peanuts. I saw a light. I was knocked to little sister's sleeping place. When we were saved, I could only see as far as the tram. My mother and I started to pack our things. The neighbors were walking round, burned and bleeding. Hataya-san told me to run away with her. I said I wanted to wait for my mother. We went to the park. A whirlwind came. At night, a gas tank burned. I saw the reflection in the river. Seeing their reflections in the river, cities hurt me. How much more may cities hurt me when I see their ashes join the wind. Then some of us will have to join the caravan, guiding the treasures of the race across the earth, the deserts, until a land's found, rain-washed enough and ready for the blue sky, when Geiger's silent. Every mirage shall project the ruin on the sky in the first year after, and we shall meet dumb emigrants racing across the desert from the distant dust. There shall be fear in their eyes, they found the sea salt, it will be tears in their eyes. And those who came back from the moon wept tears of white dust when Khrushchev said, "Our spacemen scoured all the wide expanses of the sky and found no trace of God anywhere there." But listen now, for I may not be there later. There are islands somewhere, and fishermen singing there. I hear them cry welcome over the still waters. There, I think, I will think of pebbles, of green ponds on the seashore, and sea urchins. Fishermen there shall fish from longboats. Now say this, for later you may not be there. I shall think of the silent floating, and I shall think of dolphins. Sit with me by the seashore, watching, and watch the stillness of the fishing boats. Then you shall see the miracle of the sun rising and the sun shining down, and our single ditty shall be heard. Save the sunshine in the green ring of our lifetime. Take a pebble in your hand, shining with the sun in the water upon the smooth stone, and gaze there, filled with swan-mute wonder. And gaze there at the night sky. No further urge the mind out of the green ring of this present time. Einstein told me, what does a fish know of the sea he swims in? Thought is a drop of flesh in the skull. I give you thought of the city, and a city to think in, as finish echoes in the wind now, as Christ beckons and comes singing in the crimson clouds. Person. Stand in the corner of a whitewashed room, face the join of the two walls, and speak. You'll hear a voice that's not your own, yet it's your own voice, heard for the first time as another man hears it, a dialect you should have known before. Person swims in a black ocean to any kind of shore. I was sitting by a rock pool, musing upon a pebble I had taken out from the still country after the morning tide, when a man, I think in a linen suit, with a book on birds' eggs, a camera, and, strangely enough, a bundle of the day's newspapers tied with a new strap, came as a man striding with ease from one continent to another, demanding possession of the pebble in my hand, which I denied with tightening of knuckles and a glance at other pebbles under the water, and also a shell they call the cowrie, which I hadn't noticed before, under the water of the rock pond. I hadn't looked at his face under the shadow of a straw hat, for I saw tightening of Ichor in the sandalled foot near my right hand, which I took to be something akin to anger, and the toenails had a familiar roughness. Feeling no guilt in possession of that smooth plunder, I felt its weight and coolness in the palm of my hand. I looked up with a question at the man's face. I saw his answer glittering from my eyes. I heard him answer with my voice. There, by the seashore, I, for the first time, encountered person. I let the bundle of yesterday's papers fall down on the little world where they floated a few hours before they sank, and I couldn't see the pebbles any longer, nor the cowrie. And the pebble in my hand, one honour of legend, and a thing mine about it, which added music and halo to the words of the legend, building more want in the man. Person, I read in the old news from the sea, is far more the cause of news than place or arrival of clocks. Person, I know, is much moved by the history of earthquakes, but little would the splitting of earth mean, lacking person to suffer the derangement. I want, said the man in a linen suit. I, said a man in sandals, want that. I want pebbles, none but those loved by you and touched by your hand. Person turns a mountain into a desire. Person petrifies the successful fists. I want my pebble. His face fell down and broke up on the reflection in the water. I want your pebble. His eyes altered the position of the sun. The camera exploded on the rock, which was my face. The position of the sun was red, and my cheek felt hot on the rock. My fist was a pebble being prized open. I saw a hole in the darkness, and through it I spoke at a tiny receding figure. I understood there was a round stone held in his mouth against teeth and tongue, for he said nothing, and his eyes were the same colour as pebbles. The brightness lay where it had fallen in the water. Person is a child's tears dripping down. Person with smiles under the water and position of islands and the emergence of extinct monsters from under the sea, and laughter is knowledge of the sun. A blind poet sat on the rock by a sea, drying his feet. I want loving people about me, said the crying gleeman, touching his cracked lips. Then I could see where I am. Light is a darkness that burns. I am blind. Ravens obliterate the skies. Their wings whip at the dry ribbons where my eyes were. Sand grates under the lids when I blink in the night, or when, inanely, I stare at the possessions of the sun. I thought I had witnessed enough of this human erosion, and enough sweat in the cornfields and blood on the slipped sickle. I thought wheels could crush nothing more than the thorax of a slave, till a wheel crossed my eyes and skidded in invincible soil, making it dark. I shot an arrow into the sun, and the sun went out. My hands are trees in winter, and lightning incinerates the tender extremities when I move my hands to find my way. For these rocks change overnight, and mollusks of unknown kind clutch at my feet in new ponds in the rocks. And blood is oil in the contours of my struck hands, and kind people with cool sponges don't seem to caress my streaked face when my hands don't know what they do in the dark pressure on every pore. My threnody of Troy is over, and sucked deep into the fissures of myth, and history intervening fills the caves with times, and time, which is water like the sea, and breeds rust on the bronze hoards. And my laughter is motion of water. My laughter is when sages give over profundity and drink hemlock. My laughter is the sun's passion and the sun's humiliation at having lost a pilgrim. For I will not worship what I cannot see. They led past me, they said, men, women, and many children, and told me how beautiful their eyes were. But I was a tree in winter, when cold freezes the movement of branches. I was, and I am, foundations of temples, where hewn stones meet brutally the raw rock, like the underside of roads. Wordless, where flints touch the nerved gums of the ground. I am the dark underside of all cities in the west landmass. I lie under the scars of excavation. I have mines drilled through my spine, and lie there in the dark, wordless, honoured as the father and condemned for fathering the edifice built upon my back. And where the eyes of Homer were burnt out, they gathered cinders and shrivelled flesh, and randomly devised an evolution. And this day, I am the blind man helped across the street I know so well. Person is courage, is all maggots squirming under the weight of red meat. Let there be God, said the light, giving the sun its first name, and darkness created on the first day. Let there be God, said the firmament, branding the sky as the place second only to light on the second day. Let there be God, said the dry land, and mountains blushed in the third dusk in anticipation of worship. Let there be God, said the trees, bending low in supplication to the four winds on the fourth day. Let there be God, said the seas, thundering the birth of other gods across the five oceans on the fifth day. Let there be God, said the birds, naming the beginning of images and hierarchy as they perched in the trees. Let there be God, said the man, as the woman stood at his side, and night fell on the sixth evening. Person is maker of names. Succeeded by the seventh day, which God forgot to terminate. Let there be God, said God, which man still hears on the Sabbath day. And how can we terminate this eternal Sabbath, this seventh last day, which lasted 7,000 years? Person is out of depth, even on firm ground. Somehow we shall have to extinguish the light, from which let us create another for the second first morning. We shall have to fathom the firmament to blueprint the God it created on the second day for the second day. We shall have to burn down the hills, all of them, to level the unequal adoration of the rising on the third day. We shall have to strip the trees to cease the orderly plantations of whispered gods, and crush the 4 leaves of clover on the fourth day. We shall have to evaporate the seas to distill the God they brought forth on the fifth day from the 5 creeds. We shall have to clip the birds' wings to disarm the Kaisers, unite the nations of the 6th day. We shall have to die, not as we do, in ones and twos, but utterly, as a race, to culminate the 6th day. Person is mind, struggling towards apocalypse. We shall have done 7 things for the 7th day, when all things must rest as before, as the sea after the 7th wave. But listen, I find I am alone on the lawn, looking at the stars and saying, the 7th was the last day long ago, and this is the 7th heaven. This person is bound from embryo to coffin. They think it is still reiteration of Sabbath. They wish God would wake up and finish his creation, for all they can do is fashion a breaking down of the work of 6 days, or build a heap of stones and worship this windless cairn. And this is as far as they have journeyed, as far as the well of the world's end, as far as the conception of annihilation. Person is beginning and end of all progress. Out of this indiscriminate allotment of levelled ash, let me announce a new creation, a green apple on a white plate in spring. But I am person, person who once held fast a pebble in his hand. And I am person without loving people about him. Sometimes I see him in impersonal streets and long to halloo there, but my wheels rush me past, and the past won't go, rising like blood out of the lungs when the taste stays in the mouth all day. And somehow I don't know who it is that I see there and long to halloo to. Hang a mirror on a wall of the whitewashed room. Hold a second mirror in the hand and turn the glass upon the glass. You'll see a face that's not your own, but it's your own face, seen for the first time as another man sees it, an icon you should have known before. I saw God in a mirror, which is why I am blind. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? Is it he or she? I call, mirror, mirror on the wall. Mirror, mirror, tell me all. Is she fair and is he tall? I have not found the best of all. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Mirror, mirror, through this hall I wander, found in thought, and call. When shall come, or come at all, the fairest of them all? Mirror, mirror on the wall, I see them there, I see them all, but darkness builds and shadows fall. Mirror, mirror. Person is discovery of pain. Is this pain when my heart longs to be elsewhere? Is this pain when I look into empty rooms where dust is outside the sunbeams? Is it when the streets do not answer, pain? Or in the night when my eyes see the dark, pain? Bare bulbs hang in rooms, smelling of the damp, and his bed is single. Is this pain? It is not. No, it is not, for he loves saying so. But saying cannot soothe every corner of the mind, nor slacken the steel in every nerve. Person says, I want love and loving people when there is none, when there are none. A green apple on a white plate in spring. If the white plate were the sky, if the apple were the green world, spring would have to be the proof time passes. But nothing here would move without person there to move it. Person sees the apple wither. Person smashes the white plate, and person witnesses abundance of summer turn into purity of snow, and the dumb swan walk on the shore. Person murders the lens for unmoving perfection, for person moves. after her miscarriage. This woman bears no children. In this day's paper, twins were joined at the scalp, and one died after the separation. In this day's paper, a boy born with no nerves in his body laughs at his fingers sizzling on the stove. Person is subject to whims of seed and comet. O earth, 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 hear the word of the Lord. Person is voice, connecting pinpoints of isolation. I heard the voice of God, which is why my mind is a white room. I heard the deaf composer exiled in cellars and attics in Vienna grind out the discipline of keyboard, turning only when touched on the shoulder, then thundering out where there's much bloodshot white out of a strained eye, making do mostly without words, therefore nearer to the heart's muscle. Person is eardrum and larynx in communication. I can speak, but cannot modulate accent to the subtlety of occasion. Sometimes when my throat is sore, I know I've shouted many hours thinking I was murmuring. Sometimes I've roared my secrets out to my friends and enemies alike, and when I have to speak in the auditorium, I mumbled one long inaudible monotone, or whispered, like sea heard from the cornfields, thinking I was eloquent. And no undulation of gentle sympathy now comes to me in the drawing room. No murmur as I hold hands by the stream can bend my mind from this affliction, whistling and buzzing across my skull's acoustics, as if strips of catgut twanged from one eardrum to the other all day, or a room was full of zithers with slack strings. You don't know when the sound of drowning comes on the dry land what that means. They hate me for my quiet, uncouth utterance, and I would rather walk with my true love where people never come but us, and I would rather lie down in a green glade with my ear to the grass and look into her eyes and know hers looking into mine. But they will they never understand through the rough-cut gully of my speech, and they will never understand that I am crossing my heart, gentle, here. Person is flesh, creating flesh. Person is left silent when there's silence in the desert. Person not subscribing to the flattery of others is left silent. I kissed her picture in the dark. I discovered in the morning that I had kissed a mirror. Now I understand why shells explode and why it is the sea I hear more now. Person cannot survive alone. Person is father and son's son and father and son. Person is unrealized fortune passing by unacknowledged into the wind. a cowrie, lies in the bottom of the rock pond. This woman, pressing her bare palm slowly against the window pane till the glass cracks and the disfigured hands bleed, whispers in the day room of the asylum, I am reaching out at the sun. I worship the light. I want to hold the sun in my hands. Another man, yelling obscenities and striking the orderlies, smashed all the dormitory windows and cut off with scissors the flesh of his own nose. 6 weeks later, I met him in the street, subdued and somehow lost, as though his mind were a strange city in Poland. He spoke with a deliberate conviction, patched up by half-successful therapy. I am an outsider and shrink from institutions. His grey raincoat reeked of propaganda. His eyes were the colour of pamphlets, and his voice a worn-out amplifier, built into the morass of a brain obsessed by various ways scissors may be held. And his life was working in a crater of the moon. And a man with a black beard said, I am Christ, and drank his coffee with a trembling hand. When he was young, he crucified frogs, nailing them to the bench, and was half afraid of their shrieks when he burnt them with an old cigarette lighter. Person is all God's errors left alive. A wounded soldier, warm in blankets on his way home from the front, loves the burn of iodine and the throb of the wound he knows is healing, and the smell of ether. And when I say, this is beautiful, or I love that, I am only suffering intense horror of tomorrow. Hurt is a position of the mind. Hurt is a beacon on the hilltop. Hurt is a heroic voice singing through the limbs. Hurt is a scent of roses to one whose allergy is pollen. Hurt is the insinuation of moralities. Hurt is when the end comes of a happy day. Hurt is your thought that others lack of it. Hurt is not the knife so much as the sight of blood. Hurt is unsymmetry, is incongruity, for example, in the pattern of a snowflake. And so is laughter. Laughter is a position of the mind, a beacon, and church bells in valleys, is the voice in a child's limbs, is in his hay fever, is the stoning of Christ, and the end of a happy day in sobriety. It is your witticism, and it is the delight of witnessing another's pain. For we gloat at catastrophes in the newspapers, fix our eyes to pictures of floods in India, or go to the site of the latest air disaster, that is, if it's not too far from home. But I was the woman who drove an ambulance after the earthquake. And I was the boat builder whose family drowned. And I was the pilot of the airliner. I am at some time the relative notified when the telephone rings and there is silence in the room. I am the widow and the orphan, and cling to the pebble found in the husband's hand at the sea's edge. and the pebble is cold. And I am the laughter of asylums, and the face of the clown sitting in his caravan in a square field outside a provincial town on a rainy day, whose daughter was mauled to death by a lion 3 years ago to this day. And you are the club-footed one, and the blind diabetic with his scales, and the epileptic with a stranger wiping your white mouth and loosing your shirt. And you are the abandoned girl with a baby in your arms in London, and she screamed through the hours of labour with memory of forceps blood, and the blessed ether suffocated the child. And he remembers the deep-rooted pain of a wisdom tooth, and running with his mouth wide open across a wintry field. And we are those who suffer sometime and sometimes bleed of haemophilia to death. And you are the still living men in homes for the aged, and you are the occupants of cemeteries and the roasted ribs of cremation. And they are all in this spectrum of pain, and spell out in the alphabet of grief the sum total of all suffering. And they are the I, thou, and the he, and the they, and they cry in every way and occupation. In every walk they walk with a kind of falling stickness. It is the magnificent procession of dying, most radiant and decked in all colours, and the only light is the flicker of smiles flashing along the stumbling lines, moving over the earth's crust against the black night. And the stars, being so far away, are not significant, and the dead moon and the sun in daytime is always the alchemist of perspiration, disease, affliction of all kinds, and virulent death, which is most alive of all. And we worship the sun, and I, all love someone or love something, an eye that shone once, the gap in a garden hedge, some pebble, a secret thought about journeying somewhere on the wind. We try to live up to dreams. We try to live down the waking hours. We live here. Grass is sickly yellow under the boulder. Grass is so green in the spring sunshine. Grass suffers under the snow in silence. How do I know? Each blade has a voice that cries. Each blade has a voice. Each blade has a voice that cries. Each blade has a voice that cries out, that tries out the song which says, rejoice. But each blade dies. My heart beats a lifelong tattoo. Hearts beat a lifelong tattoo out, battering out the long life in the streets, looking for you. Love looking for you. Love looking for you in the metropolis, finding you, my love, at last, weeping in some other necropolis, over the blue sea, looking for me, where we should have met in the past. Inferno is now. Purgatory is now. Paradise is always in the past. The whitewashed room stands empty, except for a linen suit hanging behind the door, and a book on birds' eggs lying with its pages open under the open window. The word Inferno is written on the white wall. The word Purgatory is carved outside on a rock. The word Paradise someone wrote on the sand, and the tide comes in. Person swims in a black ocean from every kind of shore. Ichor. Today there was mildew in the palm of my right hand. Icarus! Icarus! Why didn't you scream more loudly as you fell through the rain clouds onto the shadows of that green sea? Why didn't you land in a place where all of us could never forget the blood and bones on the grass? Icarus, Icarus, what were your thoughts as you plunged through the rain cloud? Were your eyes drained of blood and your teeth frozen with the bitter slipstream? Red and white are the memories of great falls. Red and white are the minds of the witnesses. Red are the whites of eyes, and white the once rosy cheeks. Icarus, Icarus, we can hear you before you reach the finality of the deep waters. I opened my eyes at the foot of a grey mountain, and I felt I had moved a boulder out of my skull. I looked at my hands. They were cut, and my hands were bleeding, and my hands were running with mucus. Although I had lain 3 days at the foot of the mountain, and my head was a recurrent heartbeat. My right leg was bent between knee and ankle. There was no pain. I craved for a cup full of cold water and some white bread and some butter and cheese. My mind was clear. There was no salt, and there was no blood in my brain to clog the thought. Only the slow-moving mucus of my torn hands and the awareness of cranium. It was daytime when I opened my eyes, and another time it was night when I opened my eyes, and the mountain hadn't changed, and there was pain in my right leg. Once it was raining, and at other times it was silent, and a bird stood on 2 feet on a nearby boulder, which I had lifted out of my head. There was this roaring for many hours. There was this roaring inside my ears. There was a bird's beak and a near eye and a claw that moved once and a sudden clatter of wings and a great rising shadow and a whirring of wings and a long silence. There was a bird's beak, and there was a bird's eye, and a claw, and a whole bird standing by my head, and a pain in my black, dry hand, and a fresh appearance of blood and ichor. Ichor! I shouted, and all the mountain shouted, Ichor! And I was in terrible pain, and a great flock of birds rose from the dead rocks, and I dragged myself to a dead rock, and I raised myself so as to look over the dead rock, and I saw a valley of dead rocks, and the remains of a tank with rusted rivets, and a pile of rusted bayonets and barbed wire and white sand, and a trickle of screes behind me, and a long silence, and the paralysis of my eyes. And my brain registered terror, and my eyes registered terror in the loneliness of the terrain, and my ears registered terror in the silence of the terrain, and my nose and tongue registered terror in the smell and taste of dried blood, in my hands registered terror in the pain of the bitten flesh, and my brain registered terror, for the mountain hadn't changed, and my brain registered terror in my brain. And the terror halted and turned into numb fear, and the fear turned like the head of a moron, slow like a huge head with a bulging brow, and the fear became hatred, and my hatred found a voice and screamed, I hate the rocks because they are dead like the rocks of earth. I hate the sky above, for it stares and is too faithful with the smug stars. I hate the hard earth where I lie, for the earth is hard wherever I've lain down. I hate the coolness of green grass and the sound of waterfalls, for I cannot feel or hear the green coolness or the fall of water. I hate the sun, for it hardens but does not heal my wounded hands that the bird gnawed. I hate the night, for it is long. I hate the long nights in the dark valley. I hate the raven's claw. It moved once, and the claw moved once, and not again. I hate the bird's beak. It never moves. I hate the bird's eye. It shines, but never moves. I hate the other world, for I am here in this world, far from the other world. I hate the mountain which shoved me down the screed without consideration. I hate the world. I hate the world. I curse this bloody world, which is dried blood, and its waterless valleys, and its drained arteries, and its parched tongue, and its evaporated ocean. I curse this bloodless world. I curse the silence, and am silent. My mind curses the world. For the world is screes, and the world is dry land, and the world is without God, and the world registers terror. I curse those who are afraid of the dry land. I curse the ichor of my wounds, It is not the elixir of gods and doesn't save me. It stresses the catastrophe of human cells and gurgles the slow ballad of departure. I curse the book that utters the story. I curse the black book of my desolation. I curse the order of consecutive things. There is no symmetry in the valley of dead rocks. It is a valley of open books and fluttering pages. It is a valley of sniggering letters. It is a valley of dissonant song. I curse the valley of books. I curse the black book of my desolation. This is the black book of a scree-damned gleeman. This is a journal of collapsed gods and erosion. This is a record of intermittent silence, and the voices that enter the silence are not mine. I curse the valley of silence, for my voice is broken. My tongue is the tongue of an adder. My teeth are the fangs of an adder without poison. My wisdom is that of an adder with no voice. There is a forced quiet on the land, and jackals manipulate their jaws, but there is no sound. My mouth is wide open. My teeth are stopped with mercury and silver. My tongue is a strand of seaweed hung up outside the shore house to tell the weather. And the fisherman's oracle says, no rain. No rain in the valley of fluttering books. Only the derelictions of war and gusts of amputated wind and motionless birds. It is a street in a city. It is a pavement and a blazing vehicle and smashed windows and a barricade. It is a hot country. It is a street in a town. It is a street of stone houses and roofs of slate, and rain in winter and smoke on Sunday afternoons. It is a cold country. It is winter, and snow and sand are rare companions, and the sand is cold. Raw, red flesh, and snow and sand, and ants, and unexploded shells which are rusty, is the vision of the prophet. I indict the prophecies of prophets who murmur from armchairs. I indict the disciples who do not understand the word discipline. I indict the men whom remonstrate from soapboxes in the parks. I indict the cat that laps milk from the saucer with sly glances. I indict the animal lovers who squash flies and eat meat. I indict the vegetarians who claim to be fleshly human beings and beat their children. I indict the churchgoers who love hats better than throwing pennies into the sea. I indict God, if he lets people murmur, if he is satisfied with smug worshippers, if he laughs ever, if ever he cries, if he looks the other way, or if he does anything at all, because to save one man is to kill 1,000, because to kill one man is to save 1,000. Communists squabble, Christians squabble, children squabble. There is much turpitude, I indict God. He cannot manage the world. He is lots of people. He is an ogre with 7 heads. He is a bronze corpse. He is a chatterbox. He is a crossroads with no signpost. He is a debauched old man. His genitals are male and female, constantly at play. He is a spoon, porridge, and a mouth. He prays. He plays skittles, and misses, and wins a pig. He is the best pig. He is a middle-aged schoolteacher without glasses. He is a soap factory. He has potatoes growing behind his ears in Ireland. He is a nursery rhyme. I indict God. I am God. I indict God. I open my eyes. The mountain is still there, standing with his hands on his hips, his mouth wide, lips quivering and shaking with laughter, like Christ on Christmas Eve in London. With white teeth and a brick-red tongue, he sticks out his tongue and waggles his ears and nudges me with his foot. And the desert is laughing, and his many voices shrieking, and is doing things with whips and sandpaper. I open my eyes. The mountain is still there. There is a dark blue sea. 3 ships come sailing by. The first is a pregnant woman nursing her huge belly. The second is a drunk man nursing his huge belly. The third is a huge belly with Christ sitting upon it in dejection. And the ships pass by, followed by black fins. It is a dream. No, it is not a dream. It is a quiet conversation in a huge room with leather chairs and tobacco smoke and chess sets. There is a king in every chair and a queen at home with saucepans, with an apron over her breasts but tied under her bottom. It is a conversation of dejected kings. It is a land of balm and absence of decision. It is Buddha sucking his thumb behind the hedge. It is a glade of silent nightingales. It is Elysium, with wirelesses blaring, with horns, with red-hot drums, and with January sales, and the other people's baby in the train crying, and a long journey. It is Elysium, with just us two, with our own islands and palm trees, with our warm bed and our wonderful servants, and our not having to go anywhere. It is Elysium. I am lying on my face with coral in my mouth and macaroons in my hands, and rope-soled shoes on my feet with gravel in them, sand in my eyes, and the smell of burnt sugar in my nostrils, and a geometrical compass stuck in my navel. I have not been honest with word. The desert of dead books is fabrication. The foot of the mountain is fabrication, and so is the density and tangibility of the pain sung here. It is all fabrication. They don't understand the language of emblems. They can't picture the world of emblems, nor density and the tangibility of the pain sung here. I will speak like a schoolmaster. I am a schoolmaster, and will speak out of the dead books, and define the desert, and explain the foot of the mountain, and tell the story of the emblems, and I will tell the story of a man. He is the waxen image of black magic. He is the villager in the stocks. He is the stoned prophet. He is the pillar where tourists carve their names. He is the wall of the public lavatory. He is the cursed goat of the Hebrews. He is the dethroned God and King. He paces in a prison which is his mind. He is chained in solitary confinement. He is alone. He is a whipped dog in the provincial town. He is the boot scraper outside the front door. He is the worn road on the dangerous bend. He is the unloved master who loves his children. He is Oedipus, and the Furies are his children. He is the ranting dictator in a little land, and they have said so. He is the protector of children in a little land, and they have said so. He is the conceited lawmaker in a little land, and they have said so. They have said he is a foolish man, and they have said the truth. But he has an unbreakable will. But they know it not. He has an unquenchable fund of invention. They know it not. He has the ambition of God. They know it not. They have said he is a foolish man, but they know not the truth. One day he will get up and say so. One day he will get up and say, I despise those who often drink out of little teacups. I despise those who live in precious houses. I despise those who ring tiny handbells and have servants. I despise the rich. I despise the poor because they fear the rich. I despise the carriers of that disease called platitude. I despise those who ask questions to which they know the answers. I despise the jargon of professions and pride of dialect. I despise civil servants who stand with thumbs in waistcoats' pockets. He has his little say, yawns and reads Punch in the lavatory. He makes a noise with his mouth while drinking tea. He lifts his little finger at the tea table. His underpants are probably filthy. He drives with his elbow out of the window. He picnics on the roadside with canvas chairs. He carries a transistor radio switched on in stately homes. He wears sunglasses irrespective of the condition of the sun. He sings community songs in a loud voice. He thinks he is a Christian. He wears a nice suit on Sunday. He praises modern art and is satisfied with a cheap calendar. Icarus! Icarus! It is wonderful to know you're still falling. Can I join you? We were going down a long stairway somewhere in South Europe, or maybe in a North Welsh valley on a wet day down the Roman steps. I can't remember where it was we were going down. We took in deep breaths and smoked in the open air and talked of Arab boys and sheep bells. I can't remember any sound conclusions except that we were going down somewhere. It is easy to construct a monolith of invective, to sing a ballad of a disillusioned man. It is easy to compile a catalogue of loathing, to sing a song of sixpence on a summer's day. It is easy to do this, but I bet you couldn't do it on a French horn. I challenge smug citizens whose self-recriminations smell of shaving cream. I challenge the fire-eater to eat fire. I challenge the maker of autobiography to tell a true story. I challenge the keepers of diaries to read a page to the press. I challenge God to put ants in the drinking water of nations, to make men speak one language, to murder all males, to rearrange the geological distribution of the land quickly, to break wind under the water, to have a day's rest, to let someone take over for 5 minutes, but he wouldn't dare in case they don't let him go back, to let the newspapers know something about hell, to draw a relief map of purgatory or something like that, to arrange a guided tour of heaven. I challenge anyone to say I am insane and prove it. I will answer any question, either truly or falsely. It is easy to answer any question. If I now try to speak of the desert, if I now sing a rondo of the foothills, if I now try to depict a body recumbent on the dry ground with its mouth wide open, my dialect is false. I might as well descant upon lost legends. I might as well pretend a Viking stands in my room. And if I do, the dialect is false. I say I have been a prophet raging on the mountain. I say I have builded my oracle above the screes, but I have only been dumb in combs of Cambria. There's only truth in these. I have been dumb in combs of Cambria. I have actually walked the steep slopes of Cribgoch. I have done the horseshoe. I have scrambled up the Lord's Rake. I have seen Skiddaw, and on the savage Gleadus I have walked in a mist, and have felt my feet sink in the bright green moss or jar on the grey rocks. My pain has only ever been the pain of solitude. I have not wounded my hands, nor have birds gouged my eyes out, nor have I lain on the brittle ground in the foothills. But I have thought me into those barren places, and those were emblems of my barren world. But in truth, his kingdom is a land where the king is waiting for miracles. His kingdom is one where he waits for his friend to come. His kingdom is one of wasted afternoons which are full of sunshine nevertheless. His kingdom is one where people miss their rendezvous. His kingdom is full of images of himself in alien disguises. His kingdom is one where he lies, a lifelong convalescent, tended by with loving servants and sympathetic friends who sit by his side and read or sing, or they lie by his side as his will wills, and they lay their heads on his pillow, and they hold his hand, and sometimes he murmurs beautiful lines for them to write down, and they write them down and read them in quiet voices, and they never go away. And there is little difference between waking and sleep time, and all things come to him he calls for, and they lay their heads at his pillow. And this is his kingdom as he imperceptibly grows old, and the wounds heal, the injuries of the past no more run with mucus or burn with iodine, and bandages are there for custom's sake only, and there is rest in his kingdom. But in his dreams he is protagonist of the real world, a hard-headed businessman, a man determined to alter the world line of history, a man who can only be partially successful, and there's no such thing as an absolute dictator, and there's no such thing as an entire saint. In his dreams he is protagonist of the real world. He screams into microphones, "I excommunicate the Pope. I excommunicate the adherents of religion, whatever their creed is. I excommunicate those who need myths as their nation's solid ground. I excommunicate women who bear no children and who bear children without consideration. I excommunicate all bodily pleasures that are not procreative or creative. I excommunicate those who haven't thrashed out their brains against a brick wall so as to know what brains are made of. I excommunicate the dying and the diseased and the doomed. I excommunicate hospitals, prisons, and schools where there is no hope. I excommunicate the sun, if so I choose to live in darkness and have all peoples live in darkness. I excommunicate God wherever he chooses to intervene with my courageous designs. I shall be God. I shall be world Kaiser. I shall be the architect of families. I shall supervise the machines. I shall time the tides and the monsoons. I shall determine the lie of continents. I shall alter the positions of stars, if so I choose to. And I choose to be he who seeks all, he who makes all decisions. I will stride through the laboratories of all sciences. I will be the master craftsman of all arts. I am the genius of this world. He looked up and saw the Milky Way. He understood the meaning of astronomy and walked away from the microphone, hat in hand. The ocean is near, Icarus. Is near, is near. Oh, these ecstasies I receive when I am alone. There's no one here for me to share them with. No one to know how wonderful these denouements are. I have stood trembling with bright eyes in my room, and there's no one there to see my bright eyes. There's no one to witness my ecstasies, to share my wonder at having seen for the first time ordinary things. The ocean is near, Icarus. The ocean is near, and no one knows how there have been times when I have been in the mood to sing and rage on most wonderful themes. I shall crash into the ocean one day. I shall enter the waters, and they will say, I have entered the waters and gone down. I shall go down and meet the Icarian sound. For I have been in the labyrinth of the Minotaur. I have had wings, and I have flown too near the burning sun, and I have begun that sheer journey down the screes of the air of the years. Therefore I have my legitimate scream through the atmosphere. Therefore I cry out the anathemas of my world, for I am a god falling through the atmosphere. Therefore the balsam in my veins and arteries, known as Ichor, undergoes a hideous transformation. Therefore the balsam in my veins and arteries becomes the mucus of multiple wounds, known as Ichor. And the Ichor of the wounds winds out as rivers on the confused plains of the world. And Ichor is the name of the waters that flow there. Ichor is the name of the river of this my pain, and holds the filth of my body and the sepsis of my brain. And when I hit the ocean that glitters below, I shall be cleansed of all impure elements, and I shall be pure as fire, and burns the corpse and makes it beautiful ashes. I shall become pure as generation of snowflakes. I shall be pure as rain on its way down. I shall be pure as the green grass of valleys. I shall be pure as the sun of the desert. I shall be pure as the light of a certain eye I know. I shall be pure as the shape of galaxies, and as pure as obsidian, which is still under the ground. And my song, as I hit the land of the waters, shall be pure as the sun's central atom. And I shall have no ichor in my veins, and all ichor shall have gone from my wounds, and coming down I shall be before the origin of motion. Therefore I cry out, the last remnants of my self-disgust, and cast my loathing out now in an epitome of disgorged gut, and spew out entire the ruins of my brain. I condemn the brave new world, which is neither brave nor new. I condemn those who move with the time, for time does not exist and nothing moves. I condemn the pure-hearted, for no heart hath been pure, nor can be. I condemn the holiness of gods, for there is nothing holy, and there are no gods. I condemn and disparage the human body, for it is a weak pulsation of plasma, tainted from the moment it is born. I, supreme egoist, hate, I curse, I indict, I despise, challenge, excommunicate, and utterly condemn the brains of man, because they are incapable of knowing why they seek a paradise, because they do not know the joys of simple wonder at the stars. I cry out as I plunge into deep waters. I reject the brains of man. But after all, I am only sitting here in my room and writing in a book which I have said was black. If you were to meet me, I would say hello and shake your hand and smile and say, sit down. And I would talk to you with a gentle voice and ask you questions of your joys and sorrows. No man ever saw the heart of the burning fire. No man ever knew the thoughts of a drowning man. And Ichor flows now in the water pipes of houses, and Ichor flows then in the veins of human beings. The mucus of others' wounds moves through the bloodstream of every living man, and he who knows the pure balsam of God's flowing along his veins, and he who knows can be divine the only way we here can be divine, and can join in the song of the calm waters, and can sail anywhere into the hearts of men, and can understand Elysium. There are ways that never end in the green valleys. There are highways trodden only by the gods of men. And we can be God, if only first we can accept and understand the wounds and see the journey of Ichor through the capillaries of nations. Oh, let me raise my voice for a few moments, and let me call you once to listen to the blood rushing through all your arteries and veins. The blood rises from the core of the bones in our bodies, and there are ways that never end in the arteries and veins. Our present life is built upon an entire ring. The present life of stars and galaxies is built upon the architecture of the ring. A ship sent to places beyond the quasars shall one day return to the home port. The poison of the wound shall turn again and shall roar once more as power in the veins of gods. And we can be the gods who tread the ways that never end. The world is full of stories I have heard before, and legends that are beautiful survive, and sometimes I have told them to myself to hear the slow reiteration echo round. The sound is beautiful to hear of ancient stories. The sound is beautiful to hear, and I have heard my fill of stories moving in the world, and legends that are beautiful survive. I do not think that after this I shall love the world. I have not found where the world is the best place to live in. I have not found city or coombe where the whole heart beats. It is not London, nor Washington, nor Moscow. It is not Peking. None of these has the whole heart beating. It is not Calcutta, where 1 million live in the streets. It is not Jerusalem. It is not the shrine of Miyajima. Nowhere here is the center of Kyklos. Or shall I build my own city and call it Kyklos, the center of the wheel where nothing moves, but all things are seen to be moving? Or is it enough to say that this, my body, is Kyklos, wherever I am, and is my brain my city's oracle? Then my city is a nomad, and I dwell there wherever I am, the center of the wheel where nothing moves, but all things are seen to be moving. My city is Kyklos, but nowhere have I found my city. The decision is my own, and I have decided. I am Kyklos. Yes, I am. Yes, I am Kyklos, and Ichor moves in my veins. And here I sit on a wooden chair, which is wherever I choose to set it down. Maybe in the clamour of my room full of portraits, maybe in a city square somewhere, perhaps Belgrade, maybe on the round rocks in the stillness of the shore. Here I sit on a wooden chair wherever I choose to set it down. And here I watch the world moving. And here I watch and marvel at the equilibrium of the world.